Hello, everyone out there in YouTube land. This is Big Jake coming at you from 3M VTA on my new video, my 10 favorite King of the Hill episodes. So I hope everybody enjoys. Please like and subscribe. And let's go ahead and get started here with a little bit of info, shall we? So, King of the Hill was a show that started in the late 90s, ran until 2010, had quite a few, almost 300 episodes, created by Mike Judge. Most of you, if not all of you, may know that he's the one who also created Beavis and Butthead. And Hank Hill, his design and his voice is just like Mr. Anderson from Beavis and Butthead. So, Mike Judge also did the voice of Boomhauer, which I actually didn't know until I did a little bit of research for the show. But the show was a really good show. It was definitely one of those shows that was better than people gave it credit for at the time. Had a lot of guest stars, including, like it says down there at the bottom, Tom Petty was Luann's husband, Lucky, who became a regular character in the later seasons of the show. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get started with a couple honorable mentions here. So the honorable mentions I have are, the first one being The Unbearable Blindness of Laying, which is where it's Thanksgiving and Hank's mother comes to visit with her new boyfriend, who's played by Carl Reiner. And during their visit, he accidentally walks in on them having sex, and it makes him go blind. He has what they call hysterical blindness. And the reason I find this particularly funny is because Hank is so awkward when it comes to things like this that he actually refuses to do the one thing that'll help, which is actually talk about it, because it's psychological, not physical. So I've always thought that was pretty funny. The next one I picked was Keeping Up with Our Joneses, which is where Bobby gets caught with Joseph smoking a cigarette, and he, as a punishment, Hank makes him smoke a whole carton of cigarettes in one sitting, to the point where he gets super sick. There's one pack left over, and Bobby gets super sick before he can smoke it. And so Hank decides to smoke it, because during this whole thing, he shows Bobby how to hold a cigarette the right way and all this other stuff, which is kind of funny. And then so Hank and Peggy start smoking again, and Bobby, of course, becomes addicted to smoking, and the whole episode's about them trying to deal with it and trying to hide it from each other and all that stuff. And then the last one I picked was Life in the Fast Lane, Bobby's Saga, which is where Bobby gets a job at the racetrack working for Jimmy, who is basically mentally disabled, and he's extra hard on all of his workers and all this other things. And to the point where he makes them take like dangerous risks, and they don't get paid properly, and all this other stuff. And eventually boils down to Hank finally realizing what Bobby was talking. It's not just that his boss is making him work hard; his boss is just terrible. And so Hank helps out and gets Bobby out of a terrible situation. So, but all right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our list with number 10. Number 10, I have Leanne's Saga from season 2. It's episode 19, airing in 1998. Pamela Adlon, who is the voice of Bobby, does the voice of Leanne. And basically the whole point of this episode is Leanne, who is Luann's mother, who is a drunk, gets out of prison and comes to stay with the Hills. And, all kinds of weird things happen, but eventually she meets Bill, and they strike up a relationship. Well, Bill has a foot fungus, and for whatever reason, Leanne really liked Bill's feet. So when it came back, she started drinking again to deal with it, and basically just becomes super abusive and angry at Bill all the time. And yeah, and that's what makes it so funny, is just her and Bill, Bill trying to hold on to the fact that this woman wants to be with him and stuff, even though it's terrible for him. And the whole episode ends on her having a big meltdown in front of everybody, and then getting into a fight with Peggy, and her stealing Bill's truck and leaving. So pretty darn good episode, I think. And let's get into number 9. Number 9, Unfortunate Son from season 6, episode 11. Um, Guest starring Dave Allen, John C. McGinley, who you might recognize as Dr. Cox from Scrubs. Ed Asner is in this episode. And basically, this whole episode is the VFW is, because their members are dying off, they're losing their due money, so they can't pay their bills anymore. And so eventually, after moving in with Hank for a little bit and holding their meetings there, Hank suggests that they invite the Vietnam veterans. Well, the Vietnam veterans and the World War II veterans don't get along, and Cotton and them constantly pick on them for being trauma cases and having PTSD and that kind of thing. And so eventually it boils down to, at this picnic that they're all at together, they all decide to gang up on Cotton, and Cotton and Hank run. It boils down to a big chase in the woods, to where at the very end you actually have a really good character moment for Cotton Hill, which he finally tells Hank that it was his fault, it wasn't Hank's fault, that he screwed up, and that Hank did the best that he could, and which is pretty rare for the show, because Cotton basically treats Hank like crap the entire show. And the VFW guys hear this and think that he's talking to them, and so they reconcile and decide to join. And but in all reality, I'll just be honest with you here. The whole reason this episode is on the list is because there's 3 moments where Bill gets attacked by a falcon that Dale owns, and it's absolutely hysterical. I mean, that's the only thing the falcon does is attack Bill for whatever reason, and I absolutely love it. So, but let's go ahead and move on to number 8. Number 8, oh yeah. This episode is, well, for starters, is season 5, episode 13. Guest starring Renee Zellweger as Tammy and Snoop Dogg as Alabaster. The reason this episode is so funny is because it's not because they take in this girl who turns out to be a prostitute. It's because Hank quite literally accidentally becomes her pimp and tricks her out all over town by accident. And to the point where, you know, she starts giving him money and she buys him a pimp hat, basically. And there's even a point where Hank just happens to be driving by when one of her clients refuses to pay. So Hank jumps out of the car and tells him, "You don't treat a lady like that, blah, blah, blah." And she said, "He owes me money." He said, "Give her the money," you know, not realizing what's actually going on. And that's what makes this all so funny, is Hank is so ignorant until the very end when he tells Alabaster to get lost, that Tammy's not going with him, and helps her get out of the life. But yeah, and that in and of itself is a good. It just makes for a good episode, you know. And like I said, the fact that he literally accidentally becomes her pimp is what makes this so funny. So let's go ahead and move on to number 7. Number 7, Returning Japanese, parts 1 and 2, episodes 21 and 22. David Carradine is our guest star here. Amy Hill guest stars as his mother, Michiko. This episode is another one that I picked because not only is it really funny, but it's another really good character moment for Cotton, because out of nowhere, Cotton starts feeling bad about the 50 Japanese soldiers he killed during the war. And then he starts yearning for his this nurse that he fell in love with after he lost his shins, and after his surgery that took care of him, named Michiko. Well, you find out that he fathered an illegitimate child named Junichiro, and so they go to Japan, and Cotton goes to meet her and him. Well, at one point they all go to dinner, and Junichiro, after being at dinner for a little bit, tells Cotton that he denounces his last name, his heritage, that is a shameful name, because and the reason he feels this way is because he left his mother Michiko, but he never found out that Cotton actually tried to stay, but he couldn't. They wouldn't let him. So he after this, he literally goes on this rampage throughout Japan, starts spitting on things, knocking over things, to the point where there's a ceremony where a bunch of soldiers are going to go meet the emperor, and he decides he's going to spit in the emperor's face. And at the very last minute, he Genichiro comes to him and calls him father and says that Hank made him realize that his last name is not shameful and that he embraces the fact that Cotton is his real father. And then we also have a moment in this episode, in one of these episodes, where Cotton tells Hank that you did a good job, you're a good son, Hank. And then, which I said about the one episode that doesn't happen very often. Those are two of the moments, very few, where Cotton actually treats Hank like he actually loves him like a son. So, but let's go ahead and move on to number 6. Number 6, Jumpin' Crack Bass. James Carville is our guest star here, and so is Brent Forrester. This episode is funny because, once again, of Hank's ignorance. After having a bad day at fishing, he decides to goes to the bait shop and talks to the owner about a different kind of bait, because he's decided to give up on the worm because they only used to use regular earthworms. So he tells him about this guy named Jack that makes his own bait, that it's all natural and all this other stuff. And so he goes to find him, and he takes a wrong turn on it's this bad part of town. He takes a wrong turn, and he meets up with this young kid, and he says, "Are you Jack?" He's like, "Yeah, I got you, Jack. It's a drug dealer." And Hank doesn't know this, and he inadvertently buys a vial of crack and uses it as fish bait. And it works. The fish go crazy for it. And then when he goes back to get more, he's arrested for buying drugs. And it's just hilarious because Hank's so ignorant that he had no idea that he was buying crack cocaine. And so the judge makes him prove it, that he didn't know what he was doing, that he thought he was buying bait. And they go fishing, and eventually it works out for Hank, that he catches a fish, and all's well that ends well. So once again, just another episode that's made really funny by the fact that Hank is just so awkward and ignorant of the world around him. So, well, let's go ahead and move to number 5. Number 5, Bobby Goes Nuts. Now, this one is responsible for a meme, which is why it's so funny. After being beat up by Chain Wasana-san, Hank tells Bobby he should enroll at boxing at the YMCA. And he tries to sign up, but it's full. So instead, he signs up for a woman's self-defense course. And basically, they teach him to fight like a girl, in the sense that, like grabbing and scratching at, grabbing at the crotch, kicking in the balls, that kind of thing. And which leads to Bobby, every time he's in a fight or anything, literally just yelling out, "That's my purse! I don't know you!" and then kicking somebody in the nuts. And just like in the picture here, when Hank's trying to teach him how to box, Bobby literally just kicks him right in the balls. And so, yeah, and that's why it's so funny, is because of the whole "that's my purse, I don't know you" thing. It's just absolutely hysterical to watch, and I can't help but laugh every time. So, well, let's go ahead and move to number 4. Number 4, Bills Are Made to Be Broken. Now, this episode isn't as funny as most of the episodes, but it's just a really good moment. It's from season 4, it's episode 3. So the Arlen High School football team's on a streak right now, and their star player, Ricky, is about to break Bill's touchdown record. And Dale even makes the comment, like, draw straws for see who... the Seattle it takes before he kills himself, or something like that. And but Hank, has faith that Bill's a good sport and that he takes it, and which he does. And then when it comes to the moment, they literally let Ricky just walk across the line because he got injured in the previous game to break to break the record. So Hank tries to get an asterisk put next to Ricky's name, and of course they're all about the political side of it and don't agree with him. So because of a loophole, because Bill never graduated high school because he was in the military, they let him come back for one game to try to get his record back. And so Hank helps him, and he does. He ties Ricky's record, and he even says that, when Ricky tied my record, he did it honestly. He said, "I'm honored to share it with him." And you have this really good moment where Bill just kind of looks at Hank and said, "I could have never done this without you. Thank you, Hank." And it's just, it's just one of those really good feel-good moments for the neighborhood sad sack Bill. And sometimes people like that need a win. So, it's a good episode. But we're going to go ahead and move to number 3. Number 3, Firefighting, We Will Go. Season 3, episode 10. This episode, I love this episode because they all decide to become volunteer firefighters because the real firefighters are out with the flu, quote unquote, and the one guy says that he thinks they're holding out for more money. So so Bill, Hank, Boomhauer, and Dale become volunteer firefighters, and they can't get along. Hank's all about the rules and about doing things the right way, and of course all the other ones just want to goof off. But what makes the episode so funny is they inadvertently burn down their own firehouse, and you get to hear the events through everybody's perspective, and everybody's is a little different. Like when Dale tells it, Dale's like this super buff character with long hair. Hank's wearing like a drill sergeant outfit. And then you got Bill. Ironically enough, Bill, everybody looks normal, but for whatever reason, Bill made himself more bald than normal. So even in his own vision, he's kind of like you know what I mean? He still has a bad view of himself. And then you got Boomhauer, which is absolutely hilarious because, most of the time you can't understand what Boomhauer says. And in his version of it, everybody talks like him but him. He talks normal, but then everybody else talks just like how he does. And then, of course, Hank tells the truth, and it comes to find out that there's an old beer sign that this character, Chet Elderson, used to plug in all the time that used to throw sparks, and that's responsible for the fire. So in the end, they all realized that Hank was right, that he was the only one taking it serious, that he was the only one that really deserved to be a firefighter. So Hank ends up covering for Dale, who plugged in the sign and set the place on fire. So let's go ahead and move to number 2. Number 2, Pretty Pretty Dresses. Season 3, episode 9, one of the Christmas episodes. It's the Christmas season, and Bill's the sad sack. The episode literally opens up with him crying because about, his ex-wife, his wife left him at Christmas time. So he spends a lot of times with the Hills and becomes kind of a big nuisance. So Hank finally gives him some tough love after he gets a pet iguana, names it Lenore, and it runs away. So then he goes back to Bill's house and just flat out tells him, look, Lenore's never coming back. She left him. She's never coming back. She's never ever going to come back. He needs to just deal with it and get over with, basically. And Bill just kind of snaps and doesn't know what to do. So he kind of has a mental breakdown to the point where he's literally wearing women's dresses and calling himself Lenore. And so Hank, in an attempt, the only thing he could think of to do to get him over it was Hank puts on a dress, calls himself Lenore, and flat out tells him, like, Bill, I'm Lenore, and I left you because I don't love you anymore. And so then Bill reacts to this by actually getting to say his piece to Lenore that he never got to say before. And it helps him get over it. And he realizes, he says, he even says to Hank, he said, I hit rock bottom, didn't I? And Hank says, yeah, and hard. He said, but the good news is I don't know where to go but up from here. And Bill just kind of agrees, and it just kind of fades out that way, with one minor little funny moment coming in where Dale puts on a dress because he thinks it's part of the party, and then realizes that they weren't doing it anymore, and he just kind of ducks out of sight real quick. So definitely a really funny moment, really funny episode. But we're going to go ahead and move on to number 1, which might surprise you a little bit, but my number 1. Won't You Pee My Neighbor? This episode is about some Buddhist monks who come to visit, and they think the reincarnation of their late Lama has been reincarnated in the area, and they think they want Chain Wasana-san to take this test. And basically the test is there's a bunch of objects on a rug, and the monks say that the reincarnation will recognize his earthly possessions. And so Bobby, in an attempt to help Connie take the test before Chain, picks up a cane and starts doing this little dance to distract Chain and all this other stuff. Well, it turns out he picked correctly, and he picked the Lama's cane. So now the Buddhists think that he's the Lama. So the whole episode is about Bobby trying to figure out what to do, how to deal with the situation, because he doesn't know how to be a Lama. He doesn't know how to be a leader. He doesn't know. He's struggling with questions that somebody my age, which FYI, I'm in my mid-30s. Somebody my age would struggle with, and even to the point where he finds out that a llama's not allowed to have a wife or a girlfriend, so he's afraid of losing Connie. And at one point, he even tells Connie, "Well, I'll just flunk on purpose, and we'll be okay." And Connie says, "No, because if you are the llama, then I'll be disrespecting Buddha every single day, and I can't do that." So he's trying to decide how to handle the situation where if he doesn't do it for real, he loses Connie, and if he does it for real and he picks correctly and they think he is the llama, he also loses Connie. So this episode is a particularly good character episode for Bobby. And in the end, on the rug, the head monk comes down and tells him to pick, and he says, he asks him, "Can I pick anything on this rug, anything I see?" And the monk says yes. Well, he sees Connie's reflection in the mirror, in a mirror on the rug, and he says, "I picked that. I picked Connie right there in the mirror," which leads to a pretty emotional moment for Connie, and she starts tearing up and gives Bobby a big hug. And as they walk away hand in hand, the head monk and one of the other monks talk to each other and says, "But sir, that was Lama Sanglog's mirror." And the head monk says, "Yes, but he didn't pick it." And he says, "But he used it." And he says, "Well," he's like, "tough call." He's like, "But it was mine to make, and I made it." So it makes you wonder if Bobby really was a llama or not. So, but there you have it, folks. That's my top 10. I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And I hope everyone enjoys this video. What's your favorite episodes? Tell me what are your favorite, if you have any favorite moments from these episodes that I picked or other favorite moments. I would love to hear from you. And next time I'm going to do my top 15 death metal bands. So I look forward to doing that. I look forward for you guys to watch it. So I'll see you guys. Same nerd time, same nerd channel. Have a good evening.